record and
Good afternoon and welcome to Agri-Talk. Today we're going to talk a little bit about a different kind of farm.
Yes.
And our guest today is Ivory Harlow, owner and operator of Dickie Bird Farms. So welcome to the show, and I guess I'd like to ask, what is Dickie Bird Farms?
Dickie Bird Farm is a meat, goat, game bird, and forage operation in Chillicothe, Ohio. We started farming in 2012. We moved here from Texas and started the farm.
So how did you get into this? What's a little bit about your background?
My husband and I both come from small towns. We both grew up on farms. I grew up on a horse farm. My husband comes from cattle people in Texas. So we were stationed in Texas. We were both in the United States Air Force. Spent 10 years stationed in Texas, and that entire time on the military base, we talked about how we wanted to get back to our rural roots. My husband went to work for the Department of Veterans Affairs after our military service was over, and he took a transfer option to Ohio. So we came here and started looking for a small farm and purchased one and started working on the dream we'd been planning to for years.
Is this a different kind of farm? I know Chillicothe is like right at the cutoff of the flatland of northern Ohio and then the very hilly part of southeast Ohio. Is it more hilly, being goats, or?
Yeah, and you know, we have a nice mix of both. So our farm is about 40 acres and we rent about 17 acres additionally around us. And it's interesting, we have some nice flat fields for pasture, but there are some fields that we make hay on, and I am gritting my teeth when I'm on that tractor because I think it's just going to tip right over. We do have some hills and some ravines on the property as well. Goats are very resilient livestock. We use a lot of temporary fencing when we need to clear out woodlands and use temporary fencing in that area, and they're just as happy to climb rocky hillsides as they are to graze on a pasture. It's one reason we actually chose, to raise goats versus raising other kinds of livestock, because they'll adapt to pretty much any kind of terrain.
Now, was that a secondary decision when you moved here to Ohio? I assume you moved here because partially of the VA.
Right.
So did you buy the farm and it's like, okay, what can we do with this?
Yeah, we wanted to start small. When we started, we were growing heirloom produce, and we had a poultry operation, a laying hen operation. And we also raised meat birds and turkeys for Thanksgiving. And so we started kind of in a totally different direct-to-consumer sales marketing strategy than we have now. It's evolved over time. Mostly just following where the profits were. We realized very quickly that no one wants to bale small square bales these days. It's a lot of hard labor, and we were both physically healthy enough to do the hard labor. So we decided to take that on, and then it made sense to add livestock to our operation since we were already producing really high quality grass square hay bales. So we diversified, started adding livestock. Goats, again, was a decision mostly due to the terrain. And we saw the market as emerging for meat goats, particularly in our region. We took some classes down at the University of Kentucky. Actually, they have a really fantastic small ruminants, both goat and sheep, kind of educational programming. And we kind of felt out how it would work with our operation and felt like it was a really good fit. And we're glad we did. We've grown slowly over time. We got our first goats in 2013, I believe, and have been growing our stock since.
Now, amongst the poultry and the goats, would you call them all free range? And, what kind of operation is that?
Yeah, so all of the poultry that we raise is free range. Our goats are there's not like a free range determination for goats, but we do raise them all naturally. We're not certified organic operation, however, we would qualify for that. I think, when you're doing direct to consumer sales, organic certification makes a lot of sense. We do not do direct to consumer sales with livestock. We market our goats through United Producers Cooperative. And so we're not, that organic certification is a great way to communicate to customers. But since we're dealing through the cooperative, it's not a certification that would necessarily fit our marketing model. But we do raise our animals all naturally. It's a big part of the values of our farm.
Now, did I understand correctly, in the beginning you started with like farmers markets?
We did. Yep, we were selling vegetables and eggs at farmers markets.
Now, when you say heirloom, what does that mean?
Since we were so small, our operation was, so small, we knew we had to do something different. So the produce we picked were candy roaster squash and, specialty striped tomatoes and the odd things that you would walk through the farmer's market that would be eye-catching, that would demand a premium price because we weren't moving that volume, that to support a wholesale market or anything like that. We were growing like strawberry popcorn and different kind of interesting varieties, and so it was unique. It was a lot of fun to kind of pick our vegetables every year. But again, highly labor intensive operation. I think it works great for small farms, but it was very labor intensive and seasonal, production. I think if you plan it right, it can be really lucrative. But you have to dedicate a lot of time and a lot of effort into that.
So what do you raise right now?
We raise meat goats, and we also bale small square mixed grass and clover hays. We raise game birds. We raise quail and pheasant on the farm, and that is what our operation looks like today.
How long have you been in the goat business, if you would?
We got our first goats in 2013.
Okay.
So, and again, it's been slowly over time. We very rarely purchase outside stock. We breed our own breeding stock. So it's been growing our herd kind of slowly and consistently and getting our genetics down right, learning some lessons along the way.
And when we say goat, obviously there's a variety of kind. What kind do you raise? Yeah.
What breed?
I know you raise milk goats and then other goats. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so there are milk, dairy goats or meat goats, basically are the two main categories. Within dairy goats, there's I would say 6 really common dairy goat breeds that you would see here in America. We raise alpine dairy goats, and the majority of our herd is a meat goat breed called a boar. Boars originated in South Africa. So they're actually very new to America. They've only been here since 1993. But there's tons of boar goats in Australia, New Zealand, common in Europe, Germany in particular. But they're the breed of meat goat that we raise.
And what's the size of a normal meat goat? There's a kind of a range of size when you do beef cattle. 1,000, 1,500 pounds. 13 is usually when they get, sent off to the butcher shop or to another herd. What would you get out of a meat goat? How compares?
Yeah, that range is very similar with goats. So depending on the time of year and when you're taking an animal to market, there are target weight ranges. Our market goats that we're marketing for meat through United Producers, we always try and get between about 80 to 90 pounds as a market weight. So that's a premium rate. Obviously, if you're marketing like a cull animal, goats can be up to 250, 300 pounds. They can grow very large, but that's not going to give you that high quality, meat. That's not the marketable premium kind of meat, to have that kind of flavorful and the right texture. and things. So I think a target range, it's very similar to lamb.
Okay.
It's right about 80 to 90 pounds.
And what's a time frame? So can I raise, can I get a baby or a kid in the early spring and be able to have it up to 90 pounds and sell it, or how does that work?
Yeah, so goats gestation period, so the term that they're pregnant is about 5 months. And then we wean approximately 3 months. It kind of depends on weights. If you have a triplet, obviously it takes them a little bit longer to gain. And then we wean, and it takes about 3 months after weaning. So you're looking at about 6 months total of growth to achieve that target weight range to go to market.
Okay.
And we also sell club kids to 4-H kids as well. So January is our biggest birthing season throughout the year on our production schedule, and that is because the goats are ready for fair. So we have spring is a fun time to have kids coming to pick out their 4-H projects on the farm.
Yeah, I've been around some goats when they were just very small.
Yeah.
They are the cutest, most fun little guys I've ever seen.
Yeah, they are very rambunctious. And so in January, we have those, and they're all wearing little coats and running around our house. It's a lot of fun, but a lot of work.
So what's an average that you have? 50, 100, or when you're in production, that.
Yeah. So the size of our breeding stock right now, we have a 50 head of breeders and 3 bucks to service those breeders. So it really will range between 70 to 160 kids a year, just depending on the time of year. We do 3 birthing cycles over 2 years. So we station them out, they're not all giving birth at the same amount of time. I did mention January is our largest birthing, just because we have those fair kids. We love producing club kids for local county fairs. And so January is our largest crop of kids, but we also will have them intermittently throughout the year.
Okay.
Is there any particular difficulties or challenges with goats rather than, more commonly the cows and pigs that we normally see?
I think one thing that we, our first year that we were producing, we were super excited when we'd have groups of triplets. We just thought that was great. And just, the turnaround, the return on investment, we were just excited about it. We realized triplets are really hard, especially with boars, because they don't produce a lot of milk.
Right.
And usually just because of natural selection and instinctually, they'll reject one of the kids. Because in a natural environment, they won't survive. So those are the ones that come live in laundry baskets in our mud room, and we're bottle feeding every 3 hours to keep them alive. So that's a huge challenge of production. Goats typically have twins, but this last birthing cycle, we had 8 sets of triplets.
Wow.
And we were not expecting that. So it can be, we just keep our fingers crossed now that we're going to have doubles. And if it's a single, then we wipe our brow and we're like, okay, triplets are tough.
Okay. Well, it's time for a short break, so we'll be back in just a few. Welcome back to Agri-Talk, and we're talking to Ivory Harlow, a goat farmer.
Yeah.
Amongst some things.
Amongst other things on the farm as well. Birds, not only goats as in meat goats, but she also has milk goats. Is that what?
Yes.
Yeah. So we were just talking about the meat side. What about the milk side, if you would? What's your farm look like there?
Our motivation with dairy goats was really because boar goats, which are our meat breed, produce a small volume of milk. They're just not huge producers. And so we would run into difficulty when we have sometimes twins and often triplets where they wouldn't produce enough milk to sustain those birds. An issue in the production system then is you are constantly either feeding them like a milk powder, or having to deal with, you know, not having enough milk and maybe only feeding one of the babies. So we started raising alpines and syncing those breeding cycles of the alpines with the boars. So we always have an alpine in production when we have boar babies. That way, when there comes a situation where we don't have enough healthy natural milk, we can feed alpine milk back to boar babies. And that's worked really well for us. Often we won't need all that milk to feed the boar babies, and so that's great because it fills our cereal bowls. We also make homestead cheese, yogurt, sour cream, things like that for ourselves. And so it provides our family with healthy milk as well.
Is there a difference between regular cow milk and goat milk as far as nutritional value?
Yeah, goat milk has a much lower butterfat content than cow's milk. So you'll notice that cream that separates to the top in cow's milk, there's far less of that in goat's milk. There's far less cream to skim. So if you're wanting a low-fat milk, then goat's milk might be for you because it's naturally low in fat and low in cholesterol. However, when you're making things like cheese and you need a lot of fat, it can be a problem. Sometimes I'll add cow's cream when I'm making cheese or something like that to boost the fat content in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the flavor is a little bit different. There are different varieties of cheese that just are fantastic for goat's milk. For example, mozzarella is relatively easy to make with goat's milk. The kind of softer cheeses, Chevre, which is a traditional goat cheese. Those kind of soft cheeses, spreadable cheeses, cream cheeses, things like that work great with goat's milk. The hard cheeses like Parmesan, Romano, things like that don't work so well with goat milk as they would with the cow milk.
Now you mentioned you do hay and small square bales. What do you do with that? Do you sell them to farmers? Do you stack them up to sit on, or what do you do with those?
A little of both. We got into the hay business realizing very quickly there was a huge market for small square bales. Aging farmer population, farmers that can't make small square bales. And my husband and I were both in the, condition to where we could. So we laugh and say we're the only farmers in the world that make small square bales because nobody wants to do that work. But that's what we do. Most of our customers are goats, raise small ruminants. We also sell to a lot of hobby farmers, so they don't want to purchase those large round bales because they don't have the storage capacity. We sell to tons of horse people. One thing that we found has been fantastic for us is working with horse customers. Horses have unique nutritional needs. To seed our fields to provide a nutrient value that's great for horses. Timothy grass, for example, or test grass provide the kind of nutrients that horses really thrive on. So we'll seed with those grasses and then sell that hay to horse people. So we can almost customize our hay bales, to the local folks that are purchasing those. We put up a new commodity storage building this year to store additional hay. So that's kind of in an area we're working to grow our operation and do some, some more local sales with hay.
Now, do you sell directly from the farm, or do you have to go through a distributor?
Nope, we sell direct to customers with our hay. And like I said, mostly we built a customer base over the last few years that these are people that know our hay and know our reputation, and so
they just come back year after year.
Yeah, and even at this point, so we have a few customers that are, will let us know months ahead of time, we're going to need 1,000 bales this year, or we're going to need 600 bales, and we'll store for them because they don't have the capacity to do that. So we can do some storage and do some work, so they can come pick it up. We have a drive-through Quonset where they can come pick it up as they need it. And so that's been a way as a smaller farm, that we've been able to run an operation and do something that the larger farms can't do for folks. and provide a consistent market for ourselves.
Now you also raise game birds.
Yep, we do.
That's what, quail and pheasant?
Yep, quail, there's Cortunix quail and bobwhite quail, and then ringneck pheasants.
What do you do with those? Are they meat, eggs, or both, or what?
We can raise birds specifically for hunting. A lot of hunting preserves or hunt and release, or even personal landowners. We had a man purchase from us this year, and he said, when I was growing up, I always used to hear the bobwhites. You know, he would hear that call. He's like, oh, I missed that call. And he just wanted to purchase bobwhites to repopulate and hear those sounds, you know, to repopulate and let out on his land.
Yeah.
And so we do some of that. Again, more small batches. So we've done orders of, you know, ranging from 10 to 100 for folks locally. Cortunix quail are a meat and egg layer bird, so often when people are wanting to get into meat or egg production with quail, there are minimum order varieties. If you go to larger hatcheries, from 100 to 250 birds, and they only want maybe 10 or 11 to provide some homestead eggs and meat for their families. So we'll do small orders for individuals.
So what kind of, how many quail eggs would you need for a week, or how many quails would you eat for dinner? You know, would it be one quail's enough, or would you need two?
So whenever we process quail, I always call them sandwich size. So a quail breast for a Cortunix quail dresses out at about 10 to 12 ounces. It fits the palm of your hand. It's like the perfect size, serving size of meat, really, when they're dressed out. A quail egg, you need about 2 to 3 quail eggs to make a large chicken egg.
And are they much more rich richer than a regular chicken egg?
Yeah, gram for gram, they do have a higher nutrient value than a chicken egg. You'll notice when you crack open a quail egg, and I should have brought examples because that would have been great. But when you crack open a quail egg, the yolk takes up much more of the space within the egg than the chicken egg does. And that really accounts for the difference in nutrients. Sometimes we will hard boil them, and they're like little perfect bite-sized nuggets. They're like little protein packs. It's fantastic.
Wow. And how many eggs do you get out of a quail? 1, 2 a day? What's the...
Yeah, our Cortunix lay about 1 a day.
Okay.
So it's very similar to a chicken.
Oh. And do they have a cycle the same way a chicken does, to where, you know, they only lay so long and then you've got to, you know, regenerate it, if you would?
Yeah, I mean, it's very much in their molting cycle is very similar to that.
Yep.
Now, another great benefit of Cortunix quail is they are mature at 7 weeks.
Oh.
So they will start laying
Early.
Traditional, like a normal egg laying hen is going to start producing eggs at 24, 25 weeks. You can get fresh eggs from a Cortunix quail at 7 to 8 weeks. Cortunix quail are ready to slaughter at about 10 to 12 weeks. So they're grown to full weight at that time. If you wanted to process your birds, certainly you don't have to if you're keeping them for eggs. But the cycle on that is much shorter. So if it was something where you just wanted to raise a crop and stock your freezer, I think quail are a fantastic solution for small farms to be able to just do that and, you know, have some eggs, you know, stock your freezer and call it a project.
Now with the pheasants, do you do that eggs and meat also?
Pheasants we are raising specifically for release, hunt and release kind of. Those are live birds.
For more game.
But they will lay eggs. I mean, and you can eat them as meat, and certainly hunters do. But we don't raise them for eggs or meat specifically.
So are they different, or do they all taste like chicken?
You know, I think they taste like turkey.
Turkey, okay.
Yeah, and when you look at quail meat, the muscle fiber and the coloring of it is very similar to wild turkey. So whenever, you know, I always have to educate people on preparing quail meat. It's fantastic to brine it for 24 hours in a salt brine, like you would almost Thanksgiving turkey. That's going to help break down those fibers. They are a game bird, so naturally you're not going to get that kind of like a Cornish hen kind of chicken, a bird that's been domesticated and bred to create that heavy, chicken meat that we are used to buying from Tyson. There's no equivalent of that in game bird world. So cooking a game bird is much better if you brine, and then using something like a Dutch oven or a crock pot to cook the meat is going to give you that desirable texture. I think that modern palates, is more apt to that.
Interesting.
Now, a lot of people are raising chickens, in their backyards.
Yeah.
They're not farmers, but they have chickens. They have eggs and do stuff. I can imagine possibly that quail might be more friendly to your neighbors, not waking them up in the morning with their, cock-a-doodle-doo.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and just small. They're smaller. And honestly, from a sanitary standpoint, they're very clean birds.
Yeah.
And I don't, with chickens, one reason that I love my chickens, but I'm glad they are free range, because it's hard to keep things clean. Biosecurity can be tough.
Yeah.
We saw that with avian flu. Even in backyard flocks, it can be really difficult. Game birds, so our Cortunix quail are in elevated pens, very large elevated pens with a very small mesh wire at the bottom. It's very sanitary, and then we will add, natural kind of like tumbleweeds, shrubs. We use straw, hay. They love building nests and finding small areas like in a natural environment. So we'll add those to the pen, but still droppings and things are, they're elevated. So it keeps it very clean and very sanitary. And so I think, in an urban setting, I think quail would be a fantastic addition to an urban farm, specifically because they take up less room and because they're a clean bird, a quiet bird, and they grow very fast.
Well, unfortunately, we are out of time.
Yeah.
So thanks for being with us.
Lots of more questions for
yeah.
sure. It's really interesting. So.
Yeah, something a little bit off the beaten path.
Well, yeah.
So thanks for being with us, Ivory, and all of you watching, thanks for watching Agri-Talk, and we'll see you next month.